How ancient Rome dealt with crime. Dim your lights. Light a candle if you have one. Imagine the scent of wet marble, burning olive oil, incense, and the distant screams of the unfortunate. This isn't just a history lesson. It's survival training. Welcome, dear viewer, or should I say, dear victim? Tonight's bedtime story isn't about princesses or dragons. It's about justice. Roman justice. And trust me, you'll be begging for dragons by the end of it. Before you drift off to sleep in your comfortable modern bed with your constitutional rights and habeas corpus, let me transport you to a time when crime and punishment weren't just episodes of a TV show, but a daily spectacle written in blood and pain. You've probably heard that Roman law forms the basis of many modern legal systems. How charmingly naive. What they don't tell you in those squeaky clean history books is that Roman justice was less about blind fairness and more about creative brutality packaged as order. So close your eyes. But not for too long. In ancient Rome, a moment's inattention could cost you a hand, your freedom, or that rather important organ keeping your blood inside your body. Tonight, you'll experience firsthand what it meant to navigate the streets of Rome in 62 CE, during the reign of Emperor Nero. Before he went, completely mad, but after he'd already murdered his own mother. You know the good old days. You're not a senator or a noble. You're not even particularly successful. You're just trying to survive another day without running afoul of laws both written and unwritten. Laws that change depending on who you are, who you know, and how much denarii jingles in your purse. Let's begin your day in ancient Rome. Remember, this is a participatory exercise in historical terror. Your objective? Make it to nightfall without being accused, convicted, flogged, exiled, executed, or, perhaps worst of all, noticed by the wrong people. And if perchance you do survive until the end, well, you'll have to do it all again tomorrow. Sweet dreams. Part 1. Morning. Waking up to Roman justice. Dawn breaks over the 7 hills of Rome. You wake up sweating in your 6th-floor apartment in the Subura district, if you can call a single room shared with 3 other people an apartment. It's more like a wooden box with aspirations. Welcome to the Insula, Rome's answer to affordable housing, where the rent is cheap but staying alive is expensive. Your head pounds from last night's cheap wine, cut with who knows what. Was it lead? Probably. Everything in Rome seems to contain trace amounts of lead. It's practically a condiment at this point. As you stumble to your window to relieve yourself, plumbing being a luxury reserved for the wealthy, you notice commotion in the street below. A man is being dragged away by the urban cohorts, Rome's version of police. Although calling them police is like calling piranhas swim instructors. They're primarily there to prevent fires and riots, with keeping the peace being a distant, tertiary concern addressed mainly through liberal application of clubs. Your neighbor leans out his window. Poor Claudius. Got caught watering down his wine before selling it. Second offense. You wince. In Rome, adulterating goods isn't just bad business. It's a crime against public order. And unlike modern consumer protection laws with their quaint fines and cease and desist letters, Roman punishment starts with public flogging and only gets more creative from there. It's like getting arrested by the FDA, if the FDA carried whips and had quarterly torture quotas to meet. The vigiles, the urban cohorts handling petty crime, will take Claudius to the local magistrate. For a first offense of fraud, he might have gotten away with a public shaming and a fine. Second offense, he'll likely be flogged while tied to the palace, a whipping post conveniently located in every forum. If he's lucky, that's all. If not, he could be sentenced to hard labor in the mines, where the average life expectancy is measured in months, not years. And just like that, your day begins with a cheerful reminder. In Rome, justice isn't just blind, it's sadistic. You splash water on your face from the communal basin in the courtyard. It smells vaguely of urine, which, incidentally, is a key ingredient in Roman laundry detergent. Yes, really. The Fullones, launderers, collect urine, from public toilets to clean clothes. The ammonia works wonders on togas. Emperor Vespasian even instituted a urine tax on public urinals, prompting his son Titus to complain about the unseemly revenue source. Vespasian's response? He held a coin under his son's nose and asked, "Does it smell?" When Titus said no, Vespasian delivered one of history's greatest dad jokes. Atqui ex lotio est. Yet it comes from urine. But enough about imperial bathroom humor. You've got to get to work, and the streets of Rome wait for no one, especially someone of your modest standing. As you dress in your simple tunic, not the toga which is reserved for citizens with actual rights, you mentally prepare for the obstacle course of Roman justice that awaits you outside. You step into the street, already crowded despite the early hour. Rome never truly sleeps. It merely shifts from one form of chaos to another. Carts rumble by, violating the Lex Julia Municipalis that prohibits daytime wagon traffic. But laws in Rome are a bit like virginity in a brothel, technically, valued but practically ignored when inconvenient. Your stomach growls. You need breakfast, but first, a quick detour to check the album, the whiteboards where new laws and edicts are posted daily. Because yes, in Rome, ignorance of the law is very much not an excuse, even when the laws change with the emperor's digestive moods. Miss a new edict, and your "I didn't know" plea will be met with laughter right before the flogging begins. The smell of fresh bread draws you to a nearby bakery. The baker, a man with forearms like tree trunks from years of kneading dough, narrows his eyes as you approach. He recognizes you. You still owe him for last week's bread. Debt in Rome isn't just a financial inconvenience, it's a slippery slope to slavery. The 12 Tables, Rome's earliest codified law from 451 BCE, had charming provisions for dealing with debtors. If you couldn't pay, your creditor could keep you in chains for 60 days, publicly displaying you in the forum on 3 consecutive market days while announcing your debt. If still no one paid, you could be sold into slavery or, in earlier times, cut into pieces, with each creditor getting a pound of flesh proportionate to what you owed them. Think of it as a debt consolidation program where you're the currency. Thankfully, by your time in 62 CE under Nero, they've reformed the system to be slightly less butcher shop-esque. Now they just take everything you own and possibly your freedom. Progress. The baker sighs and extends a small loaf toward you. "Pay me by the calends, or I go to the praetor," he warns. The calends, the first day of the month, is when debts come due. Missing that deadline means a court appearance that you very much cannot afford. You hand over your last few copper asses for today's bread. It's highway robbery, but at least it's not literal robbery, which is abundant in Rome despite, or perhaps because of, the harsh punishments. Speaking of punishment, as you turn the corner toward the forum, you hear the distinctive crack of a whip followed by screams. Justice is being served for breakfast too. A small crowd has gathered to watch a public flogging, always a popular morning entertainment in a city without smartphones. The victim is stripped to the waist, tied to a post, and being enthusiastically introduced to the business end of a flagrum. A whip with multiple tails, each embedded with sharp pieces of bone and metal. It's less a correction device and more a tool for amateur surgery. The herald announces the crime. This man has been found guilty of moving a boundary stone between properties. The crowd murmurs approvingly as skin parts from flesh. Feel that? Not in your stomach? That's the awareness that in Rome even minor property disputes are blood sports. Moving boundary stones, those markers delineating property lines, is no small matter in Roman law. The god Terminus presides over boundaries. making it both a civil and religious offense. The 12 Tables prescribed capital punishment for slaves who moved boundary stones and severe flogging for free men. By your time, flogging remains standard, with potential forced labor for repeat offenders. As the punishment continues, you notice how methodical it is. This isn't rage, it's procedure. Roman justice is nothing if not methodical in its brutality. The executioner, because that's effectively what a Roman punisher is, counts his strokes, careful to deliver exactly the number prescribed by the magistrate's sentence. Too few would be dereliction of duty. Too many would be, well, actually, no one really cares if there are a few extra lashes. Mathematical precision in torture, that's Roman efficiency for you. You hurry past, keeping your eyes down. In Rome, showing too much interest in someone else's punishment can be misinterpreted as sympathy, and sympathy for criminals is just a short, scenic stroll from being considered a criminal yourself. As you navigate through the increasingly crowded streets, you spot members of the Praetorian Guard, the emperor's elite bodyguards. They move with the casual arrogance of men who know they are both the law and above it. Since their creation under Augustus, the Praetorians have evolved from imperial protectors to kingmakers. They assassinated Caligula in 41 CE and installed Claudius as emperor, setting a dangerous precedent that will eventually turn imperial succession into a deadly auction. You give them a wide berth. The Praetorians operate under their own prefect with powers of summary execution. They don't need courts or trials, just suspicion and a convenient sword. In Nero's Rome, they're becoming increasingly intertwined with the imperial spy network, the frumentarii and speculatores, who listen for treasonous whispers in taverns and bathhouses. Imagine the Secret Service, but with the customer service approach of a hungry crocodile. Remember, in Rome, surveillance isn't electronic, but human. That quiet man in the corner of the tavern? He might be reporting your wine-loosened tongue to people who consider innocent until proven guilty, a punchline rather than a principle. Speaking of principles, you finally reach your workplace, a textile shop where you handle accounts for the owner, a freedman who climbed the social ladder through a combination of talent, tenacity, and timely bribes. As you settle at your desk, a small table with wax tablets for recording transactions, you observe the morning's first customer being overcharged by at least 30%. You say nothing. Consumer protection in Rome exists primarily as a buyer beware philosophy. The 12 Tables included provisions against fraud, stating, "Si nox furtum faxit, si im occisit, iure casus esto." If someone commits theft during the night and is killed, the killing is justified. Notice how it jumps straight to homicide as a remedy? That's Roman consumer rights in a nutshell. By mid-morning, you're deep in calculations when shouting erupts from the street. You rush to the door to see a man in tattered clothing being pursued by several others. "Thief!" they cry. He clutches a small bundle to his chest as he runs. Romans' attitude toward theft is direct. The 12 Tables distinguished between manifest theft, caught in the act, and non-manifest theft, discovered later. If caught in the act, a thief could be flogged and given as a slave to the person they robbed if they were free, or flogged and thrown from the Tarpeian Rock, a lovely cliff on the Capitoline Hill, if they were already a slave. By your time, the punishment has moderated slightly to flogging and restitution of double or quadruple the stolen amount. The thief doesn't get far. He stumbles over a vegetable cart, sending cabbages rolling across the street. The pursuers are on him instantly, citizens performing what Romans consider their civic duty, violent vigilante justice. You wince as they administer a beating that probably exceeds what a magistrate would order. But in Rome, private citizens are expected to enforce norms, with the state stepping in only for serious or complex matters. It's like Neighborhood Watch, if Neighborhood Watch carried clubs and had no oversight. Once they've had their fill of civic virtue, They'll drag what's left of the thief to the tres viri capitales, minor magistrates who handle petty crimes. If he's lucky, he'll get an actual hearing. If not, summary punishment on the spot. Roman justice is nothing if not efficient. It's like community policing. If your HOA could sentence you to mining salt in Sardinia. As the commotion subsides, your employer appears beside you. Entertaining, but not as entertaining as explaining why the quintillion account is off by 50 denarii, he says dryly. You return to your tablets, grateful that your crime, a mathematical error, falls under private discipline rather than public justice. Your employer can't legally kill you for miscalculations, but he can dismiss you, which in Rome's precarious economy might amount to the same thing, just with a longer timeline. The morning wears on. Through the window you see 3 slaves being led in chains toward the forum. Their downcast eyes and resigned postures tell a familiar story. Slavery in Rome isn't just an economic system, it's a criminal justice mechanism. Criminals sentenced to the mines or public works effectively become servi poenai, slaves of punishment. Their marriages dissolve legally, their property is confiscated, and their children lose inheritance rights. It's civil death before physical death, which usually follows quickly in the abysmal conditions of Roman hard labor. Even regular slaves exist in a strange legal limbo. They aren't legally persons, but property, yet they can be held criminally. Liable? If a slave commits a crime, the owner can either surrender the slave for punishment, noxol surrender, or pay damages. It's asset forfeiture with a pulse. The bell from the nearby forum signals noon. The sun stands high overhead, beating down on Rome's marble splendor and festering slums alike. You've survived the morning without being accused, arrested, or enslaved. Congratulations! You're doing better than a significant percentage of the urban population. But the day is only half over, and in the afternoon heat, tempers fray and patience thins. The real dangers of Roman justice are yet to come. And so concludes our morning in ancient Rome. When we return, you'll navigate the treacherous waters of the Roman legal system, where justice isn't just blind. It's on a first-name basis with your enemies. That is, if you make it that far. Part 2. Midday. Courts, corruption, and capital crimes. As the sun reaches its zenith, you're granted a brief respite from your employer's watchful eye. It's time for the midday meal, and perhaps a quick visit to the public baths. That great equalizer of Roman society where senators and shopkeepers alike strip down to their equally vulnerable flesh. But first, your employer has a task for you. Deliver an important document to his advocate at the Basilica Julia, where the courts are in session. Simple enough, except that it requires you to cross the forum, Rome's beating heart and justice central. You step into the vast open space, a chaos of commerce, politics, and punishment. To your right, a praetor presides over civil cases from his curule chair on a raised tribunal. To your left, the rostra, the great speaking platform where orators can make or break reputations with carefully aimed rhetoric. And directly ahead, a scene that reminds you why Roman justice is best observed from a safe distance. A line of men stand bound before the carcer, Rome's infamous prison built into the side of the Capitoline Hill. But prison is a misleading term by modern standards. The carcer isn't for rehabilitation or even particularly for punishment. It's primarily a holding cell for those awaiting trial or execution. Long-term incarceration is rare. Romans prefer their justice swift and terminal. The carcer consists of 2 levels, the upper carcer and the lower tullianum, a dungeon so vile that merely describing it was considered bad luck. The tullianum is reserved for enemies of the state awaiting execution. The defeated Gallic chieftain Vercingetorix spent years there before Julius Caesar finally had him strangled as part of his triumph celebration. The Apostle Paul will eventually meet his end there too, though that's still in your future. Smell the damp stone, the unwashed bodies, the despair. That's the scent of justice in the greatest civilization of its time. As you skirt the edges of the forum, you pass a peculiar structure, the columna moenia, where debtors and other minor criminals are publicly exhibited. A man stands there now, his face a mask of shame as passers-by mock him. Public humiliation, the Instagram of ancient punishment. You notice a cluster of serious-looking men in togas near the Temple of Saturn. They're not senators, their togas lack the purple stripe, but they carry wax tablets and have the alert look of professional witnesses. For a fee, they'll swear to anything in court, having conveniently observed whatever crime or contract their patron needs verified. Think of them as perjury consultants with a sliding scale fee structure. False testimony is technically a crime, punishable under the Lex Cornelia de Falsis with exile and property confiscation. In practice, it's a thriving industry. Roman courts rely heavily on witness testimony, creating a robust market for creative recollection. Speaking of courts, you finally reach the Basilica Julia, a vast columned hall where multiple court proceedings happen simultaneously. The noise is tremendous, advocates shouting, witnesses testifying, spectators commenting, all echoing off marble surfaces in a cacophony of litigious chaos. Romans love litigation almost as much as they love blood sports, and for many of the same reasons. It's entertainment with real stakes. Famous advocates attract crowds who come to witness their rhetorical flourishes and cutting cross-examinations. Cicero built his political career on successful court performances, most famously his prosecution of Verres for corruption in Sicily. You squeeze through the crowd, document clutched tightly. Inside, you witness the full spectrum of Roman justice, in action. In one corner, a quaestio perpetua, permanent criminal court, tries a case of peculatus, embezzlement of public funds. The punishment will likely be aquae et ignis interdictio, interdiction of fire and water, a form of exile that forbids anyone in Roman territory from providing the convicted with these basic necessities. It's a death sentence disguised as banishment. Nearby, a praetor handles a civil dispute between neighbors over water damage from an overflowing impluvium. Roman property law is sophisticated but ruthlessly practical. The 12 tables included specific provisions for property damage. Si aqua pluvia nocet, if rainwater causes damage, the responsible party must remedy it or pay compensation. You finally spot your employer's advocate, a middle-aged man with the permanent squint of someone who reads too many fine print contracts. As you hand over the document, you overhear a fascinating conversation between two patricians behind you. Completely innocent, of course, says one, but 300,000 sesterces to the right people should resolve it cleanly. His companion chuckles. Justice is expensive these days. Remember when a magistrate could be bought for a good dinner and a Greek slave boy? Bribery, the unspoken pillar of Roman justice. Despite laws against judicial corruption like the Lex Calpurnia de Repetundis, bribery is endemic. Even Cicero, that paragon of republican virtue, wrote to his brother about the importance of cultivating relationships with judges. It's like hiring a hitman, except the weapon is a legal document and the target is truth. Your task complete, you decide to risk a quick detour to the food stalls near the forum's edge. Your stomach has been complaining since morning, and even in a city obsessed with justice, hunger is not yet a crime. As you bite into a greasy pastry, a commotion erupts across the square. A contingent of Praetorian guards marches through the crowd, which parts before them like a human Red Sea. In their midst walks a man in a senator's toga, or what remains of one. It's torn and dirty, his dignity in similar tatters. "Who is that?" you ask the food vendor. He glances up, then quickly looks down. Senator Rubellius Plautus. Rumor has it he consulted an astrologer about his future. You wince. Under Nero, whose Paranoia grows by the day. Consulting astrologers about imperial succession is tantamount to plotting treason. The Lex Julia Majestatis, the law of treason, has been expanded to include even the flimsiest perceived slights against imperial dignity. Treason. Cases are tried before the Senate itself, acting as a court. But this is merely theater. The outcome is predetermined. Rubellius will likely be encouraged to commit suicide, the aristocrat's privilege of choosing one's own exit. If he refuses, execution awaits, followed by damnatio memoriae, the erasure of his existence from public records and the confiscation of his property. Feel your heart racing? That's the realization that in Rome, even thinking the wrong thought can be fatal. As the guards and their doomed charge disappear into the Curia Julia for his mockery of a trial, you finish your food quickly and head toward the baths. You've had enough justice for one day, and the afternoon is growing dangerously political. Baths offer sanctuary of a sort. Not legal immunity, but at least the comfort of hot water and the anonymity of nakedness. In the tepidarium, bodies of all ranks are temporarily equal, though conversations remain carefully coded. The baths are notorious hubs of information, gathering for imperial spies. As you sink into the blessedly warm water, a stranger strikes up conversation. He seems friendly enough, asking about your work, your opinions on recent grain prices, whether you think the emperor's new tax on Egyptian imports is justified. You keep your answers bland and non-committal. This is textbook frumentarii technique. Imperial. Intelligence agents fishing for dissent. They don't wear uniforms or carry identification. They look like ordinary citizens, which is what makes them so effective and terrifying. It's like social media monitoring, except the agents are in the same room as you, and cancellation involves actual cancellation of your existence. The Praetorian prefect Sextus Afranius Burrus and Nero's tutor Seneca still maintain some moderating influence over the emperor at this point in 62 CE, but Nero's darker tendencies are emerging. He's already murdered his mother Agrippina the Younger in 59 CE, and the regime grows more suspicious by the day. You excuse yourself from the conversation and move to the frigidarium, where the shock of cold water provides a convenient excuse for any chattering teeth that might otherwise be attributed to fear. Refreshed but wary, you emerge from the baths to find the afternoon waning. The forum has largely emptied as citizens head home before dark. Rome has no effective night watch, and after sunset, the streets belong to gangs, thieves, and those with official business, sometimes indistinguishable groups. As you turn toward home, a sudden commotion draws your attention to a side street. A woman is being roughly handled by two men who appear to be debt collectors, private enforcers often employed by creditors when legal remedies prove too slow. Please, I just need until the kalends. My husband will return with the money. Roman. Debt collection blurs the line between legal procedure and outright criminality. The 12 tables allowed creditors extensive rights over debtors, and while reforms have softened the most brutal aspects, debt remains a direct path to slavery. These men are likely within their technical rights, even as they violate basics. Human dignity. You hesitate. Interference could make you a target, but walking away feels wrong. This moral quandary, the bystander's dilemma, is particularly acute in a society where justice is often DIY. Fortunately, a patrol of urban cohorts rounds the corner, and the debt collectors quickly adopt a more civilized demeanor. While the vigils might not care particularly about the woman's plight, they do care about public order, and a screaming woman being dragged through the streets disrupts the illusion of Roman civility. Notice how quickly brutality becomes politeness when accountability appears? That's Roman justice in microcosm. With the immediate crisis averted, you continue homeward as the shadows lengthen. The afternoon is ending, but evening in Rome brings its own peculiar legal hazards. Night crimes carry special penalties, And the darkness that's falling isn't just literal, it's metaphorical for the justice that awaits those caught after sunset. And so we leave the courts and corruption of Roman midday behind. When we return, you'll discover the special terrors that Roman justice reserves for the evening hours, when the thin veneer of civilization peels back to reveal the raw machinery of control beneath. The night, dear viewer, is when justice truly bares its teeth. Part 3. Evening. The dark side of Roman law. The sun sinks toward the Janiculum Hill, painting Rome's jumble of insulae, temples, and palaces in hues of amber and crimson. It would be beautiful if you weren't acutely aware that darkness in Rome brings elevated legal danger. The 12 tables prescribed harsher punishments for crimes committed at night, and that tradition continues in your time. You hurry along increasingly empty streets. Shopkeepers shutter their businesses while slaves light oil lamps in wealthier homes. Rome has no systematic street lighting, another luxury reserved for the privileged. For common citizens, nightfall means retreat or risk. Feel the growing darkness pressing in around you like a physical presence. In Rome, night doesn't just fall, it hunts. As you turn onto your street, a blood-curdling scream pierces the twilight. It's coming from a nearby domus, one of the elegant single-family homes reserved for the wealthy. The iron-bound door stands partially open, lamplight spilling onto the street. Another scream follows, then silence. Do you investigate? In Rome, interfering in a patrician household is dangerous territory. The paterfamilias, the male head of household, wields near-absolute power within his domain. The vitae necisque, potestas, power of life and death, gives him legal authority to punish his children, slaves, and wife with remarkable latitude. Domestic violence isn't just permitted in Roman law. It's institutionalized as a governance mechanism. While laws theoretically protect free women from excessive brutality, excessive remains conveniently undefined, and enforcement is virtually non-existent. As you hesitate, a slave staggers through the doorway, blood streaming from a head wound. She collapses at your feet, eyes wide with terror. "Help me," she whispers. "He'll kill me this time." Roman slave law presents you with a terrible dilemma. Helping an escaped slave is technically theft under the Lex Fabia de Plagiarias. You could be fined or worse. But abandoning her likely condemns her to death, as a master's right to punish disobedient slaves is practically unlimited. It's like finding someone's iPhone on the street, except the iPhone is bleeding and begging for its life. Before you can decide, heavy footsteps approach from inside the house. A corpulent man in an expensive tunic appears in the doorway, a bloodied whip dangling from his hand. His face contorts with rage when he sees you standing over his property. "You, what are you doing with my slave?" he demands, alcohol slurring his words. "This is bad, very bad. You're now caught between the Lex Fabia and accessory liability for whatever imaginary crime he decides the slave committed." Roman justice doesn't look kindly on those who interfere with property rights, especially the property rights of the wealthy. "She fell, Domine," you say quickly, adopting a servile tone. "I was just about to bring her back to you." The man grunts, seemingly mollified by your deference. "Good. Know your place, plebeian. There's been too much slave sympathy lately. The Senate's getting soft." He grabs the slave by her hair, dragging her back inside. The door slams shut, muffling her renewed cries. You stand frozen, the weight of complicity heavy on your shoulders. This is how Roman justice works. Not through grand principles, but through thousands of small moral compromises made daily in the name of survival. As you continue home, the incident nags at your conscience. But what could you have done? The Lex Cornelia de Sicarius et Beneficis, the law against violence, theoretically prohibits murder, but killing a slave is typically treated as property damage rather than homicide. The Emperor Claudius did issue an edict stating that masters who kill sick slaves rather than caring for them would be charged with murder, but enforcement remains spotty at best. You finally reach your insula and climb the rickety stairs to your apartment. Inside, your roommates are already preparing a simple dinner of lentils, bread, and watered wine. They greet you with the tired camaraderie of fellow survivors in Rome's legal jungle. You miss the excitement, one says as you wash your hands in a basin. Crassus from the third floor was arrested this afternoon. What for, you ask, though in Rome the question is almost redundant. It could be anything from tax evasion to an offhand comment about the emperor's singing voice, which Nero fancies despite evidence to the contrary. Sacrilege, replies your roommate. Got drunk and urinated against the temple of Vesta. They're saying he'll be sewn into a sack with a dog, a rooster, a monkey, and a viper, then thrown into the Tiber. The poena culi, punishment of the sack, is usually reserved for parricides, those who murder their parents. But sacrilege against Rome's most sacred virgin priestesses can trigger similar treatment. It's considered one of Rome's most ancient punishments, designed to deny the criminal proper burial and ensure suffering before death. The animals aren't accidental additions. They're carefully selected to tear at the condemned in their final moments. It's like a petting zoo designed by Satan. Could be worse, another roommate chimes in. Remember Quintus stole a loaf of bread during the Saturnalia festival last year? That counted as sacrilege too. They crucified him. Crucifixion, the signature Roman execution method, is reserved primarily for non-citizens, slaves, and those guilty of serious crimes against the state. It's engineered specifically for prolonged suffering. Death comes slowly through exhaustion, dehydration, and asphyxiation as the victim struggles to push upward to breathe. Some victims linger for days. It's not just execution, it's performance, art with a message. Defy Rome, and your death becomes public entertainment. Imagine the wood splinters digging into raw flesh with each labored breath, the relentless sun baking exposed skin, the public spectacle of your final, most vulnerable moments. That's Roman deterrence in action. At least crucifixion is straightforward, your oldest roommate mutters, not like the legal maze poor Gaius fell into last month. You remember Gaius, a baker accused of adultery with a patrician's wife. Adultery presents a fascinating case study in the class-based application of Roman justice. Since Augustus enacted the Lex Julia de Adulteris Coercendis in 18 BCE, adultery had been criminalized as a public offense rather than a private matter. But as with all Roman law, who you are determines how the law treats you. For upper-class men caught in adultery with unmarried women, fines and minor disgrace might follow. For women or lower-class men caught with patrician women, exile was common, castration not unheard of. Husbands who failed to divorce adulterous wives could themselves be charged with pandering. The conversation stops abruptly as someone pounds on your door. Every heart freezes. Nighttime visitors rarely bring good news in Rome. Your neighbor bursts in, breathless. The Praetorians are conducting a sweep. Someone assassinated Senator Cassius Longinus an hour ago. They're questioning everyone in the area. Political assassination, the ultimate expression of Roman problem-solving. Despite its illegal status, killing one's political opponents remains a time-honored tradition. Julius Caesar received 23 stab wounds in the theater of Pompey as a retirement gift from his colleagues. Poison, daggers, and convenient accidents keep Rome's political class in constant paranoia. The legal response to assassination depends entirely on who was killed and, more importantly, who ordered the killing. If the emperor sanctioned it, it's not a crime but statecraft. If it came from below, it's high treason punishable by elaborate execution. Justice in Rome isn't blind. It's keenly aware of rank, wealth, and connection. They're checking every building, your neighbor continues, and they're in a mood. Already threw 2 men off the roof of the building next door for insufficient cooperation. The Praetorian Guard, established by Augustus as the emperor's personal security force, has evolved into a law unto themselves. Under Prefect Sextus Afranius Burrus, they maintain some discipline, but they're still more military than law enforcement, with military solutions to civilian problems. It's like having a SWAT team investigate a parking violation by bulldozing the building. You quickly scan your tiny apartment. Is there anything incriminating? Any reason they might take special interest in you? The standards for suspicious are notoriously low during security sweeps. Your roommate frantically shoves something under a sleeping mat, a small scroll. Political satire, he whispers, not worth dying for. Wise move. The Lex Majestatis, law, of treason, has expanded under imperial rule to include not just actual treason, but also seditious speech, insulting the emperor, or possessing problematic literature. Nero is particularly sensitive about criticism, especially regarding his artistic aspirations or his mother's convenient death. Hide the good wine, another roommate suggests. They'll take it as a fine for bothering them with a search. Illegal, confiscation, another perk of power in Rome. While laws technically regulate what officials can seize, enforcement is non-existent. Cicero's prosecution of Verres for his rapacious extortion in Sicily was famous precisely because it was so rare. Most victims of official theft simply accept it as an informal tax. The door splinters as two praetorians burst through, their red cloaks swirling dramatically. Behind them stands a civilian in expensive clothes, a delator or professional informant. These individuals serve as the eyes and ears of suspicious emperors, earning rewards for information leading to convictions. Under Tiberius, the delator Lucius Aelius Sejanus built an empire of fear through strategic accusations. Nero continues the tradition. By order of Prefect Burrus, everyone here is to be questioned regarding the death of Senator Cassius Longinus, announces the taller guard, his hand resting meaningfully on his gladius. Cooperation will be rewarded. Resistance will be interpreted as admission of guilt. Roman interrogation techniques lack the sophisticated psychological manipulations of modern times, favoring instead direct physical persuasion. The quaestio, examination, by torture, is standard procedure, especially for slaves, who can only testify under torture according to Roman law. The logic, such as it is, holds that slaves will only tell the truth when in sufficient pain. It's like fact-checking, but with hot irons instead of Google. For citizens, torture is technically illegal without special imperial permission, a distinction that provides cold comfort when a praetorian's boot is on your neck. Where was each of you between the 6th and 7th hour afternoon? Demands. The delator, a thin man with calculating eyes. You carefully recount your movements. Work, the forum, the baths, then straight home. Nothing suspicious, nothing that can't be verified by multiple witnesses. Your roommates do the same, voices steady despite the swords at ready. The delator makes notes on a wax tablet. And do any of you have connections to the Stoic opposition? Any relatives from Thrasea Paetus' circle? A dangerous question. Thrasea Paetus leads the Stoic opposition in the Senate, those who passively resist Nero's excesses through conspicuous moral example rather than outright rebellion. Being associated with philosophical resistance is nearly as dangerous as actual conspiracy in Nero's Rome. We're simple working men, your eldest roommate answers carefully. Philosophy is for those with leisure time. The delator seems disappointed, but nods. Search the premises, he orders the guards. Thoroughly. The search is not gentle. Beds are flipped, jars broken, the few personal possessions scattered across the floor. When they discover the hidden satirical scroll, there's a moment of terrible tension, but the guard glances at it, snorts, and tosses it aside. Apparently, the crude drawing of what might be Nero with a lyre isn't worth an arrest tonight. You've been lucky. Others have been executed for less. After what feels like centuries but is merely minutes, they leave, having found nothing worth their time. Your home lies in shambles, but your lives remain intact. A net positive in the calculus of Roman justice. The door hangs broken on one hinge, a physical manifestation of Rome's casual disregard for common privacy. "They didn't even apologize," mutters your youngest roommate. "Be grateful they didn't find a reason to take us to the Palatine for questioning," replies another. "No one returns from the palace dungeons intact." Feel your heart still racing? The mix of relief and lingering terror? That's the carefully cultivated emotional state Rome's justice system aims to produce in its citizens. As you help restore order to your tiny living space, a commotion erupts in the street below. Torches illuminate a grisly procession, the urbans, cohorts dragging what appears to be a body. No, not dragging, displaying. It's tied to a hurdle, a wooden frame used to parade the dead through the streets as warning. "Citizens of Rome," announces a herald walking ahead of the macabre parade. "Behold the traitor Marcus Vinicius, assassin of Senator Cassius Longinus. Justice has been served." The corpse is barely recognizable as human, evidence of the enthusiastic interrogation techniques employed to extract the confession that justified this summary execution. One less trial for the courts to worry about. Efficient, if not particularly just. It's like true crime television, except the confession was written by the prosecution with a branding iron. The practice of parading executed criminals serves multiple purposes in Roman criminal justice. It verifies that punishment has been carried out, deters others from similar crimes, and reminds the populace of state power. The body will eventually be thrown into the Tiber, denied proper burial rites, a final punishment that extends beyond death in a society that places tremendous importance on funerary customs. "That was fast," observes your roommate. "Too fast." Indeed. Marcus Vinicius was a known political rival of Prefect Tigellinus, the ambitious Praetorian officer positioning himself to replace the aging Burrus. The convenient confession solves multiple problems at once. Roman justice is nothing if not pragmatic. You close the broken door as best you can and finish cleaning up. The night's excitement has left everyone subdued. This is life in Rome. Violence and power wrapped in a thin veneer of legal procedure. Justice exists primarily as theater, with predetermined outcomes and carefully scripted performances. "We should sleep," suggests your eldest roommate. "Tomorrow will bring its own trials." How right he is, though not in the way he intends. Roman legal hazards never truly sleep. They merely shift form with the changing light. And tomorrow holds, perhaps the most dangerous forum of all, the arena, where justice becomes spectacle and death becomes entertainment. As you settle onto your sleeping mat, exhaustion finally overwhelming fear, you reflect on the day's narrow escapes. You've survived arrest, avoided enslavement, and managed not to witness anything that would require your convenient disappearance. By Roman standards, it's been a successful day of legal navigation. Sleep comes fitfully, filled with dreams of the Tullianum and the sack punishment. In Rome, even unconsciousness offers no reliable escape from the long shadow of the law. And so ends your evening in ancient Rome, where justice is a weapon wielded against the weak and a shield for the powerful. When we return, you'll face your final challenge, navigating the deadly spectacle of Roman punishment as entertainment in the arena, where yesterday's criminals become today's theatrical props in elaborate execution scenarios. That is, assuming you wake up at all. Part 4. Night and morning after. Spectacle, survival, and the cycle of Roman justice. Darkness. Complete darkness. Then pain, sharp and insistent, as someone shakes you awake. Your roommate's face hovers inches from yours, his expression tense in the pre-dawn gloom. "Get up," he hisses. "The whole building's being evacuated. Someone torched the thermopolium downstairs." Arson, one of Rome's most feared crimes and most common disasters. The city is a tinderbox of wooden apartments stacked like kindling, with open flames for cooking, heating, and light. The great fire that will devastate Rome in 64 CE still lies 2 years in your future. But smaller conflagrations are weekly occurrences. The legal consequences for arson are appropriately severe. The Lex Cornelia de Sicariis et Beneficias prescribes death for those who deliberately set fires, typically by the same element they unleashed. Burning alive. Lower-class arsonists face the tunica molesta, a troublesome shirt soaked in pitch and ignited with the wearer inside. Wealthier criminals might negotiate exile instead, demonstrating again how Roman justice slides along a scale calibrated by social status. Think of it as an early smoke detector system where the alarm is your own screaming as they set you on fire. You scramble to grab your meager possessions: a spare tunic, a small purse containing a few copper asses, a wooden amulet of Fortuna that has thus far lived up to her name. The smoke thickens as you stumble down the precarious stairs, joining the stream of panicked residents evacuating into the night. Outside, the vigils have arrived: Rome's combination fire brigade and night watch. Created by Augustus after particularly devastating fires, these 7 cohorts of 1,000 men each use primitive pump technology, bucket brigades, and demolition to contain blazes. They're also empowered to catch criminals operating under cover of darkness or disaster. Their commander, a scarred veteran, points accusingly at a terrified man being restrained by 2 vigils. This one was caught fleeing with oil flasks, incendiary materials. The accused, a skittish man you recognize as a baker from 2 streets over, protests his innocence. "It's olive oil for tomorrow's bread. I was saving my stock." His pleas fall on strategic deafness. The vigiles need a culprit, preferably before the fire spreads further. Roman criminal investigation is less about evidence and more about expediency. The appearance of justice served often trumps the reality, especially when the population is frightened and demanding action. Feel the heat on your face? The smoke burning your lungs? Now imagine that combined with the cold knowledge that random proximity to disaster could make you the designated scapegoat. "Take him to the carcer," orders the commander. "Trial at first light." Trial is a generous term for what awaits the baker. Given the hour and circumstances, he'll face cognitio extra ordinem, extraordinary procedure, rather than regular court process. A magistrate will make summary judgment, likely resulting in execution, unless the baker has connections or bribes substantial enough to overcome the system's momentum toward punishment. As the vigils drag their convenient suspect away, you make eye contact briefly. There's no solidarity in his gaze, only relief. Relief that it's him instead of you. That's what Roman justice does to a community. It atomizes collective empathy into individual survival instinct. By dawn, the fire is contained. Having consumed only 3 buildings, relatively speaking, it's a minor incident in a city accustomed to conflagration. You and your roommates huddle in the forum with other displaced residents, waiting for permission to return to whatever remains of your homes. The forum comes alive around you as Rome awakens. Vendors set up stalls, citizens gather to gossip, and, inevitably, the apparatus of justice creaks into motion. At the far end, a temporary tribunal has been established where the urban praetor will hear cases requiring immediate attention, including last night's arson suspect. Curiosity draws you closer, joining the crowd of spectators. Public trials serve as both entertainment and education in Rome. Object lessons in the consequences of crossing authority. The baker kneels before the tribunal, still protesting his innocence, but with the defeated tone of someone who recognizes a foregone conclusion. The proceedings are brief and one-sided. Evidence consists solely of the vigile's testimony that he possessed oil and was fleeing the scene. No witnesses are called in his defense. The praetor, eager to move on to more consequential matters, delivers his verdict with practiced gravity. For the crime of arson endangering public safety, you are sentenced to the arena. You will participate in the Meridiani, the midday executions, at tomorrow's games honoring the Emperor's safe return from Naples. The baker collapses, simultaneously broken and relieved. The arena is a death sentence, but at least it's not immediate burning. There's something uniquely Roman about this compromise. Death as public spectacle, rather than private agony. Even, punishment becomes entertainment, with the condemned serving as unwilling actors in the theater of justice. It's like being told your execution will be televised. But don't worry, you might get good ratings. The damnatio ad bestias, condemnation to beasts, represents just one of the creative execution methods showcased in the arena. Criminals might be forced to fight each other as ill-trained gladiators, reenact mythological deaths with real fatal outcomes, or face wild animals imported at great expense from across the empire. The more spectacular the crime, the more elaborate the punishment spectacle. As the baker is led away, another case takes center stage. A slave accused of stealing from his master. The evidence is similarly circumstantial, the defense non-existent. Slaves cannot legally testify except under torture, creating a perfect circular logic. They must be tortured to establish truth, and their screams become confirmation of guilt, regardless of actual innocence. This particular slave receives the mild sentence of public flogging, followed by relegation to the mines. A delayed death sentence given the conditions in Roman mining operations. The master receives compensation from the aerarium, treasury, for the loss of his human property, everyone saving face in the process. By mid-morning, you receive permission to return to your partially damaged apartment. Smoke stains the walls, but the structure remains sound. A testament to Roman engineering, if not fire prevention. As you salvage what you can, your roommate returns with news. They're giving out free tickets to tomorrow's games, he announces. Special distribution to those affected by the fire. Compensation for our troubles. The Roman concept of bread and circuses isn't just political theory, it's practical governance. Keep the masses fed and entertained, and they'll tolerate almost any injustice as long as it happens to someone else. The arena serves as the ultimate distraction, channeling collective bloodlust into controlled spectacle, while simultaneously demonstrating state power through methodical execution of enemies. We should go, suggests another roommate. If nothing else, it means a day not working. The logic is sound, if macabre. Arena attendance isn't merely entertainment, it's civic participation, a public affirmation of Roman values and hierarchy. Absence might be noted. Questions asked about your loyalty or appreciation for imperial generosity. In a system where suspicion equals guilt, visible conformity offers some protection. Feel that queasy mix of anticipation and dread? That moral compromise between entertainment and complicity? Welcome to Rome's most successful social control mechanism. The next morning dawns bright and clear. Perfect weather for public executions. You join the streams of citizens flowing toward the Flavian Amphitheater, known to posterity as the Colosseum. Though in your time it's the wooden theater in the Campus Martius that hosts most games. The wooden structure creaks under the weight of tens of thousands of spectators arranged by social rank. The Ema Cavea, front rows, hosts senators and equites in comfortable seats. The Media Cavea accommodates ordinary citizens like yourself. The Summa Cavea, highest and worst seats, holds the urban poor, foreigners, and slaves permitted to attend. Women, except for Vestal virgins who have honored places, are relegated to the very back. Roman justice extends its hierarchical obsession even to seating arrangements. The morning progresses through gladiatorial matches and animal hunts. The appetizers before the main course of criminal justice. By noon, when the sun beats directly overhead, the arena clears for the Meridiani, the midday executions that serve as intermission entertainment between the morning and afternoon events. A procession enters the arena. Condemned criminals, including the baker from yesterday's fire. They wear theatrical costumes corresponding to their method of execution. Some are dressed as mythological characters doomed to die: Icarus, Actaeon, Prometheus. Their deaths to be recreated with fatal authenticity. Others wear simple tunics, destined for direct animal attacks. The baker, you notice, has been dressed as Prometheus, the firebringer. It's like Halloween, except your costume dictates how you'll be killed for the audience's entertainment. A herald announces each criminal and their crime. The crowd responds with jeers and thrown food. This public shaming forms part of the punishment, the ultimate cancellation before a guaranteed fatal outcome. The Roman concept of dignitas, personal dignity and social standing, makes this humiliation almost as severe as the death to follow. The executions begin with the lesser criminals, petty thieves and fraudsters tied to posts and attacked by half-starved wild dogs. It's deliberately less spectacular than what will follow, a crescendo of cruelty designed to build anticipation. Next come the tunica molesta executions, criminals clothed in pitch-soaked tunics that are ignited, transforming humans into living torches. The symbolism is lost on no one. Arsonists die by fire, their punishment mimicking their crime. The baker, as Prometheus, is chained to a rock-like structure, while an elaborate contraption with fake mechanical eagles tears at a bladder of animal, blood hidden beneath his costume, all while actual flames lick at his pitch-covered body. You watch, face impassive like those around you. To show disgust or turn away invites dangerous questions about your own sympathies. Roman spectacle demands participation through witness, making all spectators complicit in state justice. The division between entertainment and punishment blurs intentionally, binding citizens to empire through shared spectatorship of authorized violence. As the afternoon games resume with professional gladiatorial matches, you find yourself, oddly, numb. This is Roman justice stripped to its essence. Pragmatic, theatrical, hierarchical, and absolutely final. There are no appeals from the arena floor, no last-minute pardons. The system operates with mechanistic certainty, not because it achieves actual justice, but because it creates the appearance of order in a chaotic world. Making your way home through Rome's crowded streets, you pass the album where new laws are posted. A fresh edict announces increased penalties for spreading rumors about imperial family members. The legal web tightens incrementally every day, criminalizing more behaviors while expanding enforcement powers. Tomorrow will bring new ways to transgress, new methods of punishment, new examples made of the unlucky or careless. That weight on your shoulders? It's not just today's exhaustion. It's the accumulated burden of navigating a system designed to keep you perpetually vulnerable to its caprice. As night falls once more on the eternal city, you reflect on your survival through another day of Roman justice. You've watched punishment dispensed with theatrical cruelty, witnessed laws applied with selective vigor, and participated in the collective ritual that transforms state violence into civic binding agent. You've navigated the invisibly thin line between criminal and citizen, a boundary that can dissolve with a wrong word, a misinterpreted gesture, or simple proximity to power's attention. In Rome, innocence isn't a status but a temporary condition, maintained through vigilance, conformity, and luck. And tomorrow? Tomorrow you'll wake and begin again, walking the same precarious path between accusation and survival. Because that's what it means to live under history's most celebrated legal system. A system that produced great principles of justice while simultaneously executing people for entertainment. Sleep well, dear viewer, and perhaps be grateful that your own legal troubles generally don't end with you being eaten by lions for a crowd's amusement. And so our darkly humorous bedtime history story comes to its bloody conclusion. You've just experienced a day in the life of Roman justice. From morning arrests to midday courts, to evening raids, to the final spectacle of arena punishment. We've witnessed how Roman law, for all its sophisticated principles that would later influence modern legal systems, operated primarily as social control rather than moral arbitration. Justice wasn't blind in Rome. It peaked constantly, making note of wealth, status, connection, and political convenience. The Romans gave us foundational legal concepts like precedent, due process for citizens, and the distinction between civil and criminal law. But they also normalized cruelty as spectacle, institutionalized inequality before the law, and weaponized justice as political tool. It's a complex legacy that we still wrestle with today. It's like discovering your favorite teacher was also running a fight club after school hours. Perhaps next time you complain about a parking ticket or jury duty, remember, at least your traffic court judge isn't ordering you sewn into a sack with angry animals as punishment for returning your library books late. If there's a lesson in Roman justice beyond the obvious, don't time travel to ancient Rome if you value your skin. It might be this. Systems of justice reveal a society's true values far more honestly than their stated ideals. Rome valued order over fairness, hierarchy over equality, and example over rehabilitation. Their justice system reflected these priorities with brutal clarity. What does our own justice system say about our values? What would future historians make of our prisons, our courts, our sentencing disparities? Are we as far from Rome as we'd like to believe? Sleep on that question if you dare. But before you drift off to dream of togas and tribunals, don't forget to like and subscribe for more horrifying yet educational bedtime stories. Comment below what crime you think you'd accidentally commit before lunch in ancient Rome. Would you survive their justice system, or would you be wearing the tunica molesta by dinner time? This has been How Ancient Rome Dealt with Crime. Remember, today's justice system may be imperfect, but at least it doesn't include death by honeyed milk and fire ants. Sweet dreams, history lovers. Don't let the lictors bite. No Romans were harmed in the making of this video. The same cannot be said for the historical Romans depicted within.